Right, so does anyone need to leave early? Lisa needs to leave early. I think Guy said he needs to leave early. You need to leave early. I'm not sure actually if Guy needs. But okay, so we've got 2 people leaving a bit early, and Councillor Bennett has said that he's got to arrive late because he's doing something at one city gathering. And Councillor Portney should be here shortly, I assume. I'm seeing him in the building. So we will make a start. I think that's not the agenda. No, that's not the agenda. So safety information. The fire alarm is not intended to go off, so if it does go off, assemble by the cathedral at the fire assembly point. We have one apology from Councillor McCowie, who's unwell, so he's being substituted by Councillor Stone.
Also Councillor Holland, who's been substituted by Councillor Bradshaw.
Yep. And I assume are you Steve?
I've replaced Steve.
You've replaced Steve. Okay, great. So that is everyone accounted for. Right, let's go to minutes from the last meeting. Has everyone read those? Is everyone happy with those? Okay, take those as read. And then public forum. We've got. We've republished these just this morning.
Yes, apologies members, the statement and questions from Dave Redgewell were omitted in error, so they've been included in your account.
Okay. So let's go through the questions. Unfortunately, Stacey can't be here, but she's asked some questions on behalf of several of the community groups about community asset transfers, which does intersect with what we're going to be discussing today. Next, we have question 5 from Dan, and we've got an officer here who might be able to help with your answers.
Okay, it sounds like it's a thing that you're going to be discussing, so I don't have a follow-up from question 5.
Okay,
I wouldn't have said that. Question 6. So the question 6 was about communication between people in Bristol and projects that are being run by WECA. There's a lot of these projects are effectively co-produced, and there's parts that Bristol City Council is responsible for, part of it's WECA responsible for. Currently there's a bit of ping-ponging between WECA and Bristol City Councils. So for example, if I went to WECA and say, why haven't any parking bays for scooters been made available, they would reply, that's something you need to go and talk to Bristol City Council about, because that's our end responsibility. And quite frankly, the way that scooter rollout's been done doesn't reflect very well on WECA, so they're not exactly promoting open conversations. So what are people meant to do in those situations, or rather, can that situation be looked at, because currently it's just not acceptable, really?
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer on behalf of the council, because I suppose we need to work on our own communications with the public. Any projects that we're doing, we should be communicating about them to the public as best we can, but when the decision maker is WECA, it's like, if they're doing a bad job, they're doing a bad job. That's not something we can prevent. I don't know. Yeah.
There is an inter-authority agreement being drawn up between WECA and the authorities to determine who's responsible for what. WECA are currently responsible for the whole scheme. So there are some things to flesh out with that. Ideally it would be in place already, but there's a few technical things that need resolving. And understanding those responsibilities is quite key to that process. And yeah, parking bays is one of the things that we're trying to resolve with them.
I'm actually aware that you don't have a nameplate, Adam.
Yeah, so I'm Adam Crowther, Head of City Transport, just here to provide assistance on any questions around transport elements.
And Jim, it might be good if you...
Yeah, I'm Jim Cliff, the Council's Civil and Section 106 officer.
Okay, so that's yours. Well, let's go to David.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my question's very similar. It's about the legal responsibility between Bristol as the Highway Authority by law and by Act of Parliament, and WEPR as the Transport Authority by Act of Parliament. And really, I suppose, it's trying to work out who's going to represent. Is it the city leader and the deputy leader representing Bristol on the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority in the new structure? So it's that is one of the first points. And I think Adam put it, really and truly, City Transport by now should have been at WECA. It's not happened, but if you look at the Act of Parliament, I do statutory acts. Most of the services have been passed, and that's why the Mayor wants to move them. And legally, that's what you should be doing. That's a debate for yourselves. Hopefully it'll be done by the time this new authority takes over. But WECA is a legal authority. It's not a nice-to-have partnership. It's a legal statutory authority. Government at the moment are consulting about North Somerset and the LEP joining it. So I think that's the point. Now, when it comes to the committee, my statement is simple. I've worked with other local authorities in South West England, Somerset, Gloucestershire, and even Yeovil Town Council, where we were doing some work the other night. They're all devolved. And the issue is the committees invite not just the council along, not just the city of Bristol as the authority, but also statutory services like Wessex Water, Pennerton, which is Bristol Water, and Bournemouth Water, and the other one they own is South West Water. People like Network Rail, people like First to speak at these committees. The West England Mayoral Combined Authority should have an officer on it. So I think the way these committees, they'll work, but they need to be structured, because it's about local services. It's about not just about what us, Bristol City Council, are going to do to you as the community. It's about community engagement, but it's also about engagement with other public bodies, other public services. We don't do that very well in Bristol. Some of our neighbours in Gloucestershire and Somerset do that extremely well. Even South Gloucestershire, which has just changed administration, has started to do that process of bringing in the communities, the forums, and actually the other public service providers. So I think, just asking you today to think about not just the Bristol parish and sort of city and county of Bristol thing, but also about what other public services, like in the city gathering, that provide services in the city, whether you're holding if you're holding a meeting in, say, Henbury, Westbury, that area, then you would involve South Gloucestershire on some of the planning issues and cross-border. If you're holding something in Clifton, you might hold something up in, you might hold something which involves the Downs Committee or involves the university. If you're out with Richard's Patch, you're more likely to involve North Somerset and some of the issues around the Green Belt and the issues of what that council thinks. So it's just trying to persuade you to think outside the box, not just Bristol. The big issue in government at the moment, whatever party you want to get involved with, where it's led by the Conservatives at the moment, Levelling Up, which is now an act, which now involves, as I say, the LEP going, North Somerset joining, and lots of other. But regional government, city region is the big thing. And I just want you to think about the city region. I mean, as an organisation, Bristol Community Qualities Forum, we work across the city region. We also work across the South West region. That's where the sort of politics are. And I'm just very worried once we lose the mayor, not me personally, Bristol Community Qualities Forum and the stakeholders, transport stakeholders, that will suddenly go insular and parishy, and we will not be a regional power base, basically. Because at the moment, whether we like it with Plymouth and Exeter and Bristol, we actually represent the South West. And it's very, very important that we continue to think that. So I think the role of the leader and the deputy leader and the committees and how these structures work and how we work with our 4 Greater Bristol authorities around us, or 3, and then the city region and the Western Gateway and Western Peninsula are very, very important. So that's our clear message, and we'll continue to monitor, because obviously, and the role of the Metro Mayor, he's not going away, nobody's going to remove him. You might wish to remove him, I know some of you do, I'm sorry about that, he's not going anywhere. Dan Norris will be staying there, and he will represent the city region at government level. And I would strongly suggest, we've said this before, I've not seen a session here. We've invited him to come and talk to you and have a two-way dialogue about what the combined authority is doing, which our good friend here said, and what the city's doing. And actually, we need to get it real in our minds. Adam's a great guy, but he's not the Transport Authority. He is the Highway Authority, and they are the Transport Authority. They're also the Regional Planning Authority, as Nicola will tell you. These are all statutory passed documents. We can't unwrite them. We need to get on and make sure we work to the legal statutory that's gone through Parliament, and then we need to deal with the Evolution Act and North Somerset Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think there's a lot of points there that certainly the next administration need to be very mindful of. And I suppose in terms of what we need to restructure, it's basically we need to get ready. We need to make sure our house is in order.
Yeah.
And make sure that those pathways are there, that we can take advantage of them as best as possible in May.
Thank you.
And go.
I was just going to ask, I remember this conversation coming up a number of times historically, particularly after Mr. Edgewell's public forum statements. I'm just wondering, have we formally invited the Mayor, the Metro Mayor?
You said we were going to.
You said we were going to.
Yeah, that message, that clear to right. That was the question that Democratic Services and maybe Tim wrote back saying to us, which we distribute to all the transport stakeholders, yes, the Mayor was going to be invited at one session, or one of you wrote back to us.
I remember, I think that we were not going to necessarily invite him to a public meeting. We were going to have a stakeholder meeting, and I think that the answer to that is that he's been speaking behind the scenes to Stephen Peacock and the...
But I think it needs, I mean, at the end of the day, the Mayor's on £19,000. It's a democratic elected local authority with a chief executive and a full democratic set of officers, which mirrors this area. And I think he should come and meet in public. He's met South Gloucestershire, he's met Bath and North East Somerset, he's even had meetings with the associate member of North Somerset, and they're not a full member of the combined authority.
All right.
That's my point, anyway.
Yeah, thanks. Do you still want to...
You've had some points, Jan.
All right.
Chair, apologies. Mayor?
Yes?
I just want to be really clear. I feel like twice Mr. Edgewell's come along and said there should be a meeting.
Yeah.
I would support an open public meeting. I appreciate officers can liaise behind the scenes. The Metro Mayor can liaise behind the scenes with whoever the Metro Mayor wants to.
What decisions do we need to make is the question.
I would be very keen to hear what the Metro Mayor input into what they feel this committee is doing, should be doing. I'm reluctant to waste the time between now and May, and then we engage once the process is underway. I think that there may even be opportunities for collaboration through area committees with elements of workers. I think this is too big an area just to let slide past. And I think formally, publicly asking the question, can the Metro Mayor and the worker officers come here and talk us through what they think the impacts are likely to be? I can't see any downside to that. That could even happen, depending on the time availability of this committee, through scrutiny. If they want to conduct some sort of joint session, but I would really like some on-the-record advice and a conversation with WECA in the public domain, say what they think the opportunities are for this.
All right. Jeff, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I agree with virtually everything that David Redwell said, but what I'm not sure is that this is the committee that should be doing the engagement. Because our role is to devise a system that works for Bristol. We're not in the executive position to have discussions with the Metro Mayor and his officers. So I think we've got to be careful that we don't try and make it sound as though we're more important,
We're able to do
influential
things that
than
we
we
can't
actually
do.
are, because we can't deliver it. And like too many of the issues we've had questions about, ultimately it is for the leader and the relevant committee chairs to establish the process of working. We can't specify what that should be. So I think we've got to be very careful that we don't create an impression that is inappropriate about what we can and are able to do.
Do we think that this is more appropriate to be done in scrutiny? What are people's thoughts? You know, because I tend to agree with Jeff and Guy that I'd like to put some sort of public discussion out there, but I can't identify any decisions that we can make on behalf of anyone. So I guess I'll come to Gary and Guy, and then we'll have to make a decision.
We can't set things in stone, but it would be silly if you don't listen to what he's got to say and what his requests are, so that we can try and set up a pattern that's not going to create a barrier. We can't decide in advance, but we can say, well, this is what's the plan, and and see what his reaction is.
Okay.
I was thinking specifically of the number of grants that have been WECA grants that are bid for by Bristol City Council that are very firmly locality based. I'm dealing with one at the moment in my ward that is an absolute nightmare because that communication chain broke down. As in, there's money on the table from WECA for a scheme that is, I'll put it very charitably, where supporting the local community is at best ambiguous. And the amount of council money and time and effort that's been put into developing that scheme, would it not have been so much better to just have WECA officers come and talk to the local community about what's wanted? There may be dozens, hundreds of opportunities like that.
This is a matter to raise with WECA though, Guy, not with us. Like, if you, this isn't something that's operational. That's for officers to do.
We're literally about to discuss, Chair, what should be devolved to area committees. And there will be area of effect stuff coming through WECA where they might appreciate a steer. They might appreciate a consultation with a pre-existing group of people that are familiar with the needs of each specific ward. It might save them time and money and hassle and make them more effective. And that's fundamental to what we're trying to do on this committee.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'll let Lorraine come in.
Thank you, Chair. I think I raised this a while ago. We had loads of discussions about this, didn't we? I think there's something about what I would aspire to is the opportunity to be able to consider what the role would be with the WECA mayor under the committee system. That's the issue, isn't it? Where it fits in, as opposed to trying to resolve ongoing challenges that currently exist. So that would have been my wish. How we do it, I don't know. How we would have done it, sorry, because this is our last meeting. But it was something just about where it would fit in. And I think if we can establish where would it fit in, potentially, and then the next, in May, June next year, that could potentially be something. I don't know.
Like, we do know that it sits with the role of the leader.
Right.
I think what I'll do is I will take an action to email Dan Norris as the chair of this group, and I will reflect what's been said in this impromptu debate, and I will see what the response is. If we need to make a public meeting, or if we need to have some further discussions, I'll make sure that that is done. Is that a good compromise for everyone?
Thank you, Chair.
That would be good.
Yeah, okay. I'll see what their response is, and I think that's just how we're going to deal with it. Okay. Make sure I do that, Lucy. Thank you. Okay. Right. We've got public statements. I suppose. Dan, do you want to speak to your statement, or are you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. And we had a public statement from Councillor Parsons about the area committees, and one from Stacey Yelland. again, about community asset transfer, although, yes, those questions were, or that statement was kind of quite a long paper on behalf of several organisations, got a lot of bullet points, signatories, and I sort of want to, because she can't be here, I do want to acknowledge that there's sort of further conversation about some of the things raised in that statement. Probably something to talk to Councillor King about, and possibly even the Mayor, because like they have some quite specific demands that we as the committee can't really action all of those. Next administration and this administration can do. But yeah, I think it's useful to provide like a bit of context for our decisions. Right, so that's public forum. So I will go on to our next item, which is our main paper, which is about local area decision making. Would you like to introduce it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the second report back from the subgroup looking at local decision making through area committees. Councillors will recall there was a meeting in October, considered a number of options and recommendations, and this report builds on some subsequent work that was requested from the subgroup. So for completeness, the report includes the options for phase 1, which are those things that will come into effect from May next year, and a little bit more detail in the report around local road safety schemes and community investment funds, as the committee asked for last time. There's a summary of what the community infrastructure levy and the local SIL element is and how that is applied and would be aligned across the area committees. And then, as I anticipate, there'll be quite a lot of discussion around the boundaries of area committees, which is something that the subgroup looked at in a lot of detail, and there's a few options in the report for members to consider if the desire is to move away from the current model of 6 area committees. So there's an option for a changing of the boundaries to 10 area committees and one for 9 area committees. Also the 6 area committee model is in the report as well. There was discussion at the last meeting, and the subgroup has reflected on this in terms of the location and frequency of area committee meetings, and it's anticipated that the area committees will meet up to a maximum of 4 times per annum, but then that will be a combination of in-person as well as online meetings. The intention being that there will be a need to meet in person more than twice a year, and more informal meetings could take place online, and there seems to be broad support for that from the subgroup. Engagement and consultation with local communities and wider stakeholders is something that, again, the subgroup have looked at and thought about in detail, and getting some parameters around how we would ensure appropriate engagement and consultation with local residents and key stakeholders is something that it's recommended that we prepare a protocol on to ensure that everyone understands what can be expected when they engage with the area committees. And then finally, the report provides some detail around the financial assumptions based on the recommendations in the report to move to a 9 or 10 area committee model, and what the indicative costs for that might look like, recognising that there will be a blend of in-person as well as online informal meetings. So there's some detail in there which obviously if we do move ahead with a change to the current model, that is something that will need to be factored into the council's budget setting process, and getting a steer on that today would be timely in terms of where we are with our current budget preparations. So those are the key things from the report. Chair, there are some appendices. So the indices of deprivation for Bristol are Appendix 1, and there's 3 further appendices which went out a little bit late but certainly have been published now, which provide visual representation of the area committees in the three options look like. So, yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I'd like to start off, we've got two officers here, so anyone who's got questions for the officers, I would quite like to ask Adam just to open, what's the work going on with the devolving to local areas about road safety schemes? What does that kind of encompass?
So essentially what we're looking at the moment is the structure of the team. So we've got a number of vacancies. Some of the teams within the service struggling to fill those vacancies, and maybe the roles are not particularly sustainable going forward. So we're bringing forward a revised structure that would be more appropriate for the committee system. So a kind of a revised local transport team that would have more of a focus on dealing with local council issues, engaging with area committees, etc. And both picking up and addressing those local transport schemes, but also acting as the link between all the other transport projects and area committees, local councils. So coordinating things like a strategic corridor that goes through a certain area, coming to an area committee to advise them what the plans are and seek comment, that sort of thing. So those proposals are just going through the system at the moment to look at what those teams might look like. We need to do some consultation on that with the teams and the people that are affected. Then resource up, because we've got a lot of vacancies in the service at the moment, so seek to then resource that up for April time for the next financial year. In terms of devolving responsibilities, obviously area committees at the moment have responsibilities for local transport schemes funded through the area committee process. That would continue. I think there's been some discussion in the committee group about what involvement there would be on other schemes. So it's as I say, sort of major schemes would be bringing them to those committees for consultation, like a viewpoint. And then the other key issue that the committee will need to look at when it's in place is what funding is going into local transport schemes. I've provided an update to the committee about what our funding sources are, what sort of projects are more local, and what sort of projects are more regional, and therefore what types of funding might be available going forwards.
Great, thank you. Right?
Thank you, Claire. Just a couple of questions from me, and thank you for that. I guess I've got two questions. I hate the SIL process. It makes me stressed when I go to those meetings because we're fighting about community safety, in regards to our roads, and then we sometimes have very little money to make any kind of real decisions. Do you know what I mean? So it's really irritating. I find it so irritating. Everybody knows that because I sit there like a grumpy bear throughout the whole process, and I don't know how we're going to deal with how that's going to help Bristol. How we're going to sort that for Bristol moving forward. That's not really a question. Sorry. So I guess I think I'm curious. That's a statement.
Yeah.
So my question is, how badly are you short-staffed? Is it sorry, am I going to answer that?
Yeah.
Is it 50%?
I guess
5%?
I guess maybe what you're trying to get at is there a way that the transport team can help to facilitate us to make better decisions in area committees about our local transport schemes?
I mean, that would be helpful. Well, that would be helpful, I guess, but it's that money, when you got 10 grand, you've only got 50 grand, you know what I mean? This is going to cost 5 million to fix, so it's that real problem we have with trying to get road safety, W the lines, speed cameras, whatever it might be, and then not having the money to do it. So that's a real issue.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of issues with the current process. The vacancies we have in the service are about 25% of the service at the moment, which is quite significant. And it is worse in the local area, like the local engineering team. They're at about 40% vacancies, I think. So that's the key issue. That's the key area that we're focusing on. That team and two other teams to kind of rebuild those and re-provide that capacity. We've had additional issues around approving contractors, and inflation impacting schemes as well. There's an ongoing issue that the SIL monies are limited, as you say. That restricts the ability to capital recharge against projects at start time, which then makes it more difficult to have the staff available. So these are all issues I'm looking to resolve through this process. The funding one generally is more complicated because you have to allocate the funding. As I said, there are a number of ways the committee could decide to allocate more funding to those types of schemes. And a key one that I'm looking at is by having a better link between strategic projects and local engineers that understand the area and know what all the priorities of the committees are, is to then utilise some of the funding from those strategic schemes on more localised issues. So there was a good example, or maybe a bad example, when we did Metrobus and we went through Parsons Street area, and Highbury Road was a long existing local transport issue that wasn't picked up by the project. Caused a lot of issues. In the end it was picked up by the project because it created so much kind of local feeling, and it was right that the project picked it up. So I want to kind of redevelop those closer links between the transport team and local councillors who understand the issues in the area, so that when we're bringing these bigger schemes forward, we're starting to pick those issues up early on and incorporate them into those projects. Now, that's not going to deal with everything because big schemes tend to go along major corridors. We have projects also like the East Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood and other schemes like that, which are more area-wide projects, which can pick up lots of smaller issues as well. That's a way of getting more localised funding into local areas. Generally, the DFT gives you money to do big things on big routes. Whereas a Liberal neighbourhood scheme enables you to look at local issues in local areas, which we don't often get that sort of funding for. So there are opportunities around that. The funding one is a key one. I'm seeking to provide a structure that will work better and engage with those issues a little better. But we all need more funding to make the schemes easier to deliver, quicker to deliver as well.
Right, I've got Guy, Richard.
Thank you. Just to put a record, thanks to Mr. Kelly, who's the first officer I think that came to the subcommittee who really engaged with the material in a very sort of thoughtful and meaningful way. It's hugely appreciated. I'm slightly troubled when I'm in area committee by how many councils are surprised that schemes that have been voted through historically haven't been delivered. It's a great thing to devolve budgets. It's pretty pointless to devolve budgets or even agree spend. If the money might be there to do the scheme itself, but if the officers aren't there to drive the scheme forward and to actually make it happen, then it just sits there. I think that's the side of this that this council really need to engage with. I remember back in the day when neighbourhood partnerships were first started to do this.
Yes, sorry.
Roughly at the same time that the austerity agenda was really kicking in. And I think an awful lot of people associated the inability to deliver schemes in the early days of neighbourhood partnerships with the council rather than with the cuts. And this is an area where I think we'll need to be very mindful moving forwards, that if we want this to be meaningful, then we will need to put our money where our mouth is and actually make it possible for the transport team to deliver the projects that other communities are being asked.
Yeah, I guess they need staff. Okay, Richard?
I'm actually going to ask a question of officers rather than make a statement. Jim, we've got actually a map of deprivation across the boards, which we can look at how it affects the proposed area committee models. Obviously, although that shows deprivation, and of course there is deprivation in all the proposed area committee models, obviously still on section 106 directly follows development, of course. Obvious is clearer what's available on the 15, or in Tim's case 25 or 15 or 25% local spend. I'm interested at the strategic level if we're able, probably full council budget, to actually employ some of that. to support local communities. Obviously, I believe the strategic cell still has to follow development-led need. Yes. I use one local example which Mark Bradshaw was aware of because I've discussed it with him. I've got a scheme, a desire for a children's play area in northern Bedfordshire down. I believe it would have been supported by local SIL from about 200 houses which have been built in recent years. But in recent years, the cost quoted for it by parks has gone up by double effectively. So there's no way we can achieve it. What I'm asking you, are we able to look more, not historically, but backwards? That there has been development here over the last couple of years. Does that qualify for drawing down strategic SIL?
There's quite a lot in there, isn't there? Try and go back to the beginning and start. So the first thing to note is that the actual amount that is formally devolved to whatever you want to have, the area committee at the moment, is capped at 15%, that's set out in regulations, or 25% in areas where there is a neighbourhood development plan in place. The rest of it, the strategic element, is more tightly constrained by regulations, and it must be applied to infrastructure that supports the growth of the city, as set out in the current and proposed local plan. So there is an inherent link really between areas of growth in the local plan and where infrastructure may be provided. But it's not quite as simple as that, is it? Because in a hypothetical example, you could have a single piece of strategic infrastructure, a new train station, a running track, a concert hall. You only have one of those in the city, and that's strategic across the city anyway, so that wouldn't necessarily be in an area of growth. What you, if we go back to something Adam was saying a few minutes ago about looking at the linkage to strategic and local, if the council in its future decision-making role, so currently decisions on strategic SIL are made by Cabinet as a general rule, certain decisions on the detail of it, sometimes before council meetings as well, order allocations. Moving forward, it won't be a Cabinet, it will be a different structure. But a lot of it's in the wording and the semantics of how you decide to make decisions, isn't it? So if you take a decision to apply X amount of strategic SIL to, let's use a hypothetical pretend example. Well, let's use a slightly more real example, but put it in a hypothetical context. You take a decision to apply a whole lot of strategic SIL to improvements in the A4018. So we'll go from the top of Park Street up to Cribs Causeway, that may go up through there, which is going to be improved. But in taking that decision, rather than just focusing on the road and the immediate junctures on it, you look a little bit broader. So you pick up some local schemes that are sort of a little bit off the side. In fact, you draw your boundary as to what the area in which you're going to spend it on a little bit wider. So there's certainly, and you're still delivering a strategic improvement, but you're sort of tying local measures into it as well that might otherwise have not been. So the authority could do that. We can't really go and say, well, there was development here some while ago, we'd like a play park, we haven't got it. It can't really look backwards in that respect, though, Councillor Eddy. It's a forward-thinking thing about promoting growth. Growth's already happened in your case, and there's no doubt that the costs have gone up right across the piece. But really, it needs to be looking forward a little bit more.
Okay, Nicola, and then Lorraine.
I've got a question for Adam, and then I've got a question for Eugene, based on what you said. Adam, my question is about governance to unlock transport projects. I don't acknowledge that the only challenge is resource. It is a challenge, but I think we need to reform the process that transport follow in order to get to a point where communities see an outcome that they're funded. Is the appetite in the transport team to look at that reform? Because I've been, in my opinion, and I feel like that is many years in the making and has not been delivered. So I just, for the record, the challenge is not just the fact that our staff there is reform required to the way decisions are taken, and I'd like to just get that commitment from you, because I think it's going to dictate the success or failure of those projects for the next few years.
There's a number of things that contribute to why schemes get delayed, and some of the processes that we have for progressing schemes are too lengthy. These sort of schemes actually ought to be quicker to move forward, because we don't need to do business case processes as well. So yes, processes to bring schemes forward, we need to look at and need to resolve that issue so they can come forward more quickly and are less impacted by inflation as part being delayed and such like. And that's something we'll be picking up as part of this process. So my proposals are to create a much bigger, stronger team there that will then be able to drive that change forward, review those processes and be delivering things at speed. We shouldn't be taking so long to deliver projects. There are reasons as to why they take so long, but that needs to be part of the ongoing process that we bring forward when we do the restructure to look at how we deliver schemes as well. We have done a internal process looking at strategic schemes as to what the delays are and how we can improve those, and we're planning on doing a similar process for smaller schemes as well.
Is that a yes then? Will
Yeah,
reform
yeah.
the decision making process? Okay.
And also that will be for the committee to push what they want as well. So exactly say what decision pathway they want to follow for the schemes.
Excellent. Jane.
My question is, legally, my understanding of, in the context where there is in parish council, which is the context that we are in, there is a certain degree of freedom about the definitions of how still lands in communities in terms of, because we don't have formal structures in the parish council, so can I ask for that too? So I'm not sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. So my question is, from a legal perspective, because we are not parished, my reading of the LGA guidance around local SIL, not disputing the 15%, is that there is a degree of freedom about where that money lands in terms of names of those groups, like what they're called, literally, and how they are arranged. Is that true?
Yeah, that's to either metaphorically keep me under the table or pick up if you think I'm very wrong. Yeah, in non-parished areas, the regulations and guidance really say that SIL charging authorities should use their existing community engagement processes and local decision-making processes to facilitate the use of the local element of SIL.
Yeah.
So, in the same way that we started off a decade or so with 14 neighbourhood partnerships, and then took the council took a decision to move to 6 area committees. We could move to 3 area committees, 25 area committees. We can adjust our boundaries as we see fit, but we still have to have a formal decision-making process.
Yeah, that's
within it.
And so you could have a legal model for SIL which looks a certain way, and then a neighbourhood committee structure which is underpinned by that, which is where localities go and sit to drink their tea and make decisions. I'm just trying to understand those two things don't have to be mirror of one another, because one's illegal, because obviously neighbourhood committees do more than determine SIL.
Yes.
They do obviously do that, but they don't just do that. So in the model that you guys as a subcommittee have developed, they do all sorts of things beyond SIL. So where my neighbour turns up to complain about dog poos in one space, but the legal mechanism for SIL can look different to that as long as it's compatible with that and the decisions are taken in an appropriate way by local decision makers.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I think I agree with it. There just has to be a formal decision-making process that is minuted, that so we're transparent about how and where. The number of organisations or entities that we decide to devolve monies down to within the council is broadly up to us, as has been reflected in how we've dealt with things over the last decade or so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to add to what Gina said, to corroborate what he said, the SIL decisions need to be taken through a formal decision making. We do a whole range of different types of community engagement. The tea and coffee scenario that you've just flagged there, Councillor Beaches, that doesn't have to sit in that arrangement. It's an informal arrangement, and you've got a lot of different things that fit that. fit that sort of notion. So, but if we're talking about the local element of SIL, we need a formal structure. Our formal structure in area committees, how we choose to define the boundaries of those.
So I suppose the point Nick was making is that, excuse me, is that in theory we could decouple two parts of this paper where all of the responsibilities but for the SIL could be, they could be in any kind of configuration, and then we could have a separate configuration for the SIL areas. That's essentially what you're...
I guess I'm describing a world where, let's face it, we're very privileged in this room that we have the nuanced understanding of how these mechanisms work. So 99% of Bristol's population, when they turn up to an area committee, they don't know what they're going into in terms of the construct that sits behind it, and nor does that really matter. So you could all sit in St George with your neighbours and have a great area committee meeting. You don't necessarily appreciate what's underpinning that, and that doesn't, why should they have to worry about that? So yes, that's what I'm saying, is that you can have a neighbourhood, because the paper, of course it makes sense to sit with your neighbours talking about local issues, like there's no disputing that. I can't believe anyone would dispute that that's not fundamentally a good thing, but does that support the outcomes within the city? My view is no. So I'm looking for a delineation that says we can support whatever option the committee comes to a conclusion today on whatever number we come to, but I'd like to separate that from automatically sliding into an environment where that determines how SIL is spent today, because I don't think we understand that, and I think we need to have a legal review of that, and I think we need to understand how to optimise that to get the best outcomes that we want to see in Bristol. Because there's two debates, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? But one sliding into the other is I'm not supportive of, because I don't think that's been duly considered. But I equally agree you want to sit with your neighbours to talk about local issues, of course, so you wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah. Can I just make sure everyone understands the position that we've just clarified? Because that is quite
nuanced.
Yeah, it's quite nuanced. And it is like a sort of a decoupling of something in the paper that is lumped. Okay, I think that's it's an interesting curveball.
Can you explain that? Because
So what I'm saying.
I'll explain it. So Nicola's basically suggesting. So Nicola's position, as I understand it, is that the proposed area committees don't necessarily provide us with the outcomes we want when we spend SIL. And however, they are appropriate decisions other than SIL as listed in the suggested things that we'll do in area committees. So road safety projects and other transport schemes that aren't funded by SIL, or that could be funded by SIL.
CAP decisions. Lead managers.
Yeah, all the other decisions would be. Nicola's saying that those could be in one type of area committee, and then we could have another type of area committee, a separate legal structure that just deals with SIL.
But the point I'm making is the things that Jenny has described there. It's not public, it's a legal construct, isn't it? You need to legally be able to determine how SIL is spent off stage, and then you have your actual community structures, neighbourhood structures, which makes sense where you turn up to go and do your talking.
It's
I'm just trying
legally possible is what we have determined. Right, I've got Lorraine, then I'll go Guy, Lisa, Mark.
I'm sure
Not
she
Guy. I
Jeff.
pointed at Jeff, sorry.
One letter, right?
Lorraine, every G is the same person. Lorraine, Jeff.
I should go at the end.
Sorry.
Is this all about the same discussion with Nicola? Because mine was about mapping out the world.
Yeah, ask
so I
your
can
own
wait
question.
at the end.
No, ask your
Want
own
to go now?
question. Yeah.
So my question was, I'm not sure if it's to both of you, just a really quick question, do we have a map of Bristol which talks about all the roads where requests have come in about, double yellow lines, road safety measures, etc.? Just because this is something, I know that since 2 years I've been here, 3 years, I've put in, there's been lots of communication with residents about we need double yellow lines, you know, we need speed bumps, we need diversion, you know, roadworks. And I'm wondering if you guys are mapping that out so that you have a sense of Bristol. So that's it. It's really straightforward.
We have improved my street work and register issues like that. Need to apply, you know, a degree of intelligence to it as to, you know, is it one person saying this or is it, you know, 100 people who want it, that sort of thing. So it needs kind of interrogation, but there is a system that exists for that.
Okay. Jack.
Can I just comment on that first? Because I don't think you have got everything on that yet. Because in my area, there's no point in us even putting in a request because we know the answer that there's no funding. So I could give you a list of 100 roads that need extra yellow lines at the junctions and similar issues.
Good point.
So there is a problem here that whatever we do does not solve because it doesn't make more funds. But so on this topic, the point I wanted to make is I don't think I'm disagreeing with what Nicola says, but I think there's a danger that it's academic for many of us. For my area committee, most of the time...
Well, it's not academic, Jeff.
Well, it is.
We could make one area committee. We could get rid of all of these and have all local facilities everywhere.
If we have no funds
we could
to
do
spend,
that,
if we have no funds to spend, it doesn't really matter.
No, but that's the point I'm making.
We could, there's millions of pounds to spend.
Yeah.
That's not true. Just right now in the model option
6,
3, that doesn't work for your community. But there is millions of pounds of local still to be spent. So that it's not academic, and that is my fundamental point, is sliding into a construct I don't think anyone really understands the implication of, and I'd like to do that separately.
So if you're giving my community a chance for a say on that, then I would welcome that, because at the moment we are excluded from that, and we don't have any local still to spend in very little.
And that's not what
and that is the secondary issue in this, in terms of what the area committees can spend. I recognise the areas with the most development have the most need for infrastructure, so I understand that. But actually, to be in an area that has nothing that you can spend, and I have to say, half a zebra crossing each year is not overly useful to the community, and therefore we've actually got to think about something that engages with our residents. And if they look at it and feel that we have no purpose because we can't influence those local decisions, and the minor traffic schemes are the ones that make the biggest impact on areas where something isn't working. They can see something that is a common sense improvement, and there is no mechanism for delivering it. So that is something I think we have to address. Otherwise, in fact, the authority doesn't look as though it's interested in the problem. The issue nothing to do with any of that I want to raise for discussion is in terms of the area committees, I just want to question whether it is envisaged that the petition system that we've identified will apply to area committees as well. In other words, that 1,000 signatures could bring an item to discussion at area committees. Because it would seem odd to me if we create a situation where that could be brought to the committee, policy of the committees, but not actually brought to area committees, so that the communities will at least have a mechanism to raise them. So I just throw that out, because we ought to at least be clear that either we are saying that can happen, or we're saying no, it can't, but not simply be silent on it. That doesn't seem appropriate.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because we haven't got a question on that from the paper, but could you give a view, Tim?
So at a previous meeting we have discussed how we expand the public forum that happens through area committees. At the moment, area committees, in theory, are supposed to only receive statements, but we've already made the decision that they will be entitled to raise questions and predominantly around delivery of services. and those questions can be passed on to officers for a response. So not dissimilar to the way that public forum works for statements and questions in formal council meetings. So the only missing piece of the jigsaw, I guess, is whether they should have the ability to consider petitions and indeed have a debate on them. And I see no reason in principle why they couldn't do that.
All right. Shall we just, aside from, I don't think we ought to have a petition number threshold. Shall we just make a decision as a committee that we're going to accept petitions at area committees?
No, can I just come in there?
Or is that?
I've no problem with petitions being submitted without a threshold, but to have a debate, there's got to be a threshold.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, one could descend into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the petition
Sure.
some parameters that they retain to local issues.
Yes. Yeah.
In that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll, let's just take that in. Councillor Eddy, thank you. Yeah, right, we are sort of we're done with the first half of the meeting. We're getting towards, I am going to take questions, don't worry. I'm just framing. Yeah, I think we need to start, focusing a little bit. But if people still have questions, then I want those first, if they are actually questions. But we need to get into some of the nitty-gritty debates. So I will be moving us towards that very shortly. So I've got Lisa and Mark and, oh my gosh, okay, are these questions? Okay. Tim, do you have a question?
Mine was to start the debate. So
okay.
That's all
And Guy, did you have a question? No? Okay.
Cheryl, so long ago.
Right, Lisa, you're next.
I just wanted to squeak. So what I'm hearing, what I heard was we're going to a suggestion was that we're going to have a community conversation that will feed into a process where we can then decide on how we're going to allocate the SIL. Okay, yes, and that would be in a meeting process, a bit like what we do now with the area committee SILs, with petitions and with questions. Yes. How is there any possibility that we can deregulate the process so that we can literally go straight to the community and have them actually make those decisions? That's my question.
I guess that's a process that we sort of followed for the, community resilience?
The safe streets.
The answer is no. The answer is no, it's unlawful.
Yeah.
Council money
For
must be
SIL,
spent by decisions by councillors or devolved to officers. That's the simple legal answer.
yeah, but for,
I agree,
for
Councillor
the
Kennedy.
community resilience,
I'll give you a job
I
later on,
guess
Tim.
that's- Thank you, Tims. Mark.
Right, it's so nice to be back again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to reflect on something which Adam said earlier about flexing the strategic schemes, and I do remember the Metrobus extremely well, as you can imagine. And it is a good way of getting some of these local schemes built and done. But this issue around having a long list of schemes, it isn't new. Forever since I've been on the council, it's been an issue, and it's a capacity issue, it's a contractor issue, and it's also a long-term planning issue as well, because some of these schemes are very worthwhile, but they're kind of spontaneous, they kind of emerge when you're having these community conversations. And I'm just wondering if there's space in what we're designing today to think about a future which has more of these areas adopting their own neighbourhood plans, where these schemes form part of that, and therefore there's more predictability, there's more pipeline effect, if you like, to be able to gear up our internal capacity. Because I think whilst we continue doing what we're doing at the moment, even with refinements, this problem is going to continue. And my last point, I know you're pressed for time, is that I find it really difficult to define a boundary, because there's no perfect boundary, for how these configurations of wards are going to work. I do believe there's something about the integrity of ward members in all this, and about the role of an individual ward and the members that represent that ward. I'm not saying we can have 36 individual sets of decisions, but for me that's actually quite important, and I wouldn't want to lose sight of that. And that's me done.
Thank you, Mark. Well, let's just go down the lady side. Tom.
So I had two questions. One was on road safety schemes, and there's a balance to be struck here, isn't there, about being evidence-led and our duties that we have to maintain the highway versus then local decision-making. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about how we're going to could manage those tensions between the two, because otherwise there's a risk that pet projects potentially get put forward and prioritised, which may not be the things that are most needed to be done from a road safety perspective in different parts of the city. I have a first question and I've got one for Jim after.
Yeah, so we have a road safety budget that picks up small road safety schemes. All of the schemes we do that impact the highway, if they're of sufficient size, we'll have a road safety audit that looks at the road safety issues there. We have what's called a safe systems approach to road safety, so it's looking at the whole road safety issue. I don't know that we're delivering that as well as we could, and part of this restructure will be looking at that road safety team to have a kind of a bigger role for road safety across the whole programme. And it's a similar thing to sort of cycling. If you have one cycling officer and they're not there that day, you don't have anyone doing cycling. Road safety should be embedded into every scheme that we're doing, so that will be part of that process. There's always a risk when you're determining what schemes to do that you'll pick certain things and not pick other things. We do obviously analysis throughout the year on road safety, cluster sites, that sort of thing. That's tending to be less of a focus now because the more systems approach is about looking to just improve road safety in general. So it's a risk how you deal with it can be challenging, I think, and this kind of reflects on Mark's point as well, where you take more of a neighbourhood approach, you can pick up a number of issues at once. So we had a lot of complaints from local residents quite reasonably about roads near Rosemary Lane and that sort of area, because there's a kind of key run through there and vehicles driving very quickly up narrow streets. Thinking, well, our road closed. Okay, if we close that road, then the cars just move to the next road. So maybe if we close this road, it means we don't have, we deal with the issue across all of those roads. So slightly wider area schemes can pick those things up. That does need a bit more investment and a bit more resource to take that area approach rather than picking individual things, because then you end up chasing the tail a bit. So I think there are ways you can manage that risk, but there is always a risk that you will pick projects for whatever reason. You can set up processes to do assessments that mean you rank why you're picking certain projects, but there'll be lots of things that you consider, from road safety to the economic benefits. It might be part of a strategic cycle route, it might be part of a key bus route or something along those lines. So there's lots of different things you assess schemes on. It will be for the committee really to set out the parameters that they want funding to work by, and that's the best way to influence how that process works. So this is what your high-level objectives are, and then have a process that leads to delivery of those, which will help with selection of which schemes are most appropriate.
So the interface between Transport Policy Committee and Area Committees will be quite crucial.
So you can set high-level objectives, and then those can translate down into how you actually implement it at a lower level.
Thank you. And then I think this question, I don't have to do, but I just wanted to ask it just so there's clarity among the room. So one of the big questions that's come up, certainly from Labour, has been concerned around the equitability of how SIL is spread, and just to clarify, so one of the things we can't do, let's say we can't keep the existing 6 or can't open another 9, you couldn't take money from one of those and then put that into another area of the local park, could you?
No, I mean, and the whole point about SIL, local SIL, is that it's actually not, it was never designed to be equitable. If, now, I'm going to go off a tangent here, but probably what you wouldn't want to hear, but I'll throw it in anyway. If what you're really interested in, putting everything else aside, is broadly ensuring that each area committee has a similar amount of SIL, then you'd have 3 area committees, west, east and south. Because what you have to do is get Lawrence Hill in a different committee to Central and Bedminster in a different committee to those two as well. So in effect, West would be Area Committee 1 and 2 as it is now, adding in Lockleys, Central and Ashley. East would be Area Committee 3 and 4, less Lockleys, Central and Ashley, and South would be everything south of Europe. That would be the nearest you could get to an equitable split, if that's what you're after. But obviously you end up with 3 large area committees, rather than lots of smaller ones, and which makes decision making a little bit further away from people. But the more you have smaller ones, the less equitable, the more the differential between the haves and the have-nots.
Sorry, so can I just correct that? Because you've not included the factor of neighbourhood plans. Once you take that into account, you actually can do what you suggest.
Well, I think we can.
No, you can't just not with the bit that's ring fence for neighbourhood
Because
plans.
what you forget is communities will apply for more neighbourhood plans if they realise that money will be taken from their end of the city to be spent in another. It will suddenly be a very, very good motivator for communities to apply for a neighbourhood plan to lock money into their community.
You're right, Ken, it's a lot of work to get a neighbourhood development plan in place.
It's
It's a surprising amount of work. It's a lot of hurdles to jump through. It's not something to be undertaken lightly by people who haven't got a lot of stamina. Whether it actually happen or not, I don't know, but I mean,
I think,
you
yeah,
are right there.
yeah.
You should remember what SILS 4, and SILS 4 developing an area which is being affected by a building.
I'm just trying to understand the rules here, so which I think is quite important for us to inform our decision making. So just as a follow-up question to that, so within those area committees, whatever number form they take, can we set policy decisions around the amount of that still, accepting neighbourhood plans for a moment, to spend a certain percentage of that then in areas of higher deprivation? Is that a policy decision we could take within each area committee, whatever size it is?
Right, that's a fair question. Obviously, all boundaries are arbitrary, aren't they? They're there for administrative purposes. There is nothing to stop an area committee taking a decision to spend money in an adjacent area committee's area. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So let's pretend you've got area committee A here, area committee B there, main road is your boundary, and actually there's a big park just here that benefits both area committees, and area committee A is quite happy to put some of its money into area committee B's park. Very simply. There's nothing to stop an area committee making a decision to spend money something adjacent to it, should it wish to do so.
But that area committee, where the money is, has to take the decision
Yes,
to spend
that's
elsewhere.
correct.
That's
Yeah.
fine. So just within an area committee of itself, could we set a policy position, if we wanted to, that within area committee 1, 50% of that money must be spent in the higher, more deprived local super output areas? That's what we takes the policy decision.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see why not. So whether if members in area committee, whatever, want to spend their local SIL at the other end of the city, that will be perhaps a slightly odd decision to take, but I don't think there's anything that would stop members taking that decision as part of their area committee decision-making process. I think that's right, Tony.
Can I just...
Sorry,
add to Jim's point. When we were trying to clarify my discussion earlier, exactly what Jim is describing would be off stage. That is the legal construct in which we make our decisions. And then the debate about the locality groups, call them neighbourhood committees, just give it, it doesn't have to be called a neighbourhood committee, can be segmented however you like, but it would feed up. The money would be ring-fenced. If, to Councillor Renard's point, you can make a policy decision as a future committee chamber to direct that, obviously you offset and mitigate the impact of growth, but then for everything else within the 15%, you could take that policy decision, it would feed up through those 3, and then your localities would make those choices. But if you represent or you are living or you're a citizen in those deprived areas, that you will have some focus.
Okay. That's been very helpful. Councillor Bennett is next on my list.
Thanks, Chair. So one of the things, I think I've mentioned this previously, about we've got the new local plan coming out, we know when the developments in Bristol are broadly going to be, and we've got the maps of the proposed areas, and we've rightly put on the maps the areas of multiple deprivation. I just think we're missing something by not also including, at least from my reading of the maps, where the likely areas of development are going to be.
I had a discussion with Tony yesterday, and he went through every single one oh well, it was option 2 we went through. And the only major area that has a lot of deprivation that wouldn't directly be getting any development money is Hartcliffe. That's the largest one. There are obviously pockets across the city that would probably lose out. That's the major one.
That's just the point I sort of
Yeah.
want to make, because obviously we talk about equitability, but still is a resource there to manage the impacts of development. I think it's right to make sure area committees broadly reflect where development's going to be, while making sure more deprived communities get their fair share, which I would say is a significant proportion. I'm just wondering how that's been considered in this process, and obviously you said you're
yeah, in the
process,
process, I guess that's a question for Tim and Guy and Tom. In the process, as these were developed, that question of deprivation, I guess it came up.
But the main thing that came up was that I think 4 of the 6 area committees this year had absolutely no local SIL to spend. I mean, this seems to be a perverse debate. It's not millions of pounds. On average, it's £600,000 a year based on 15% of £4 million. So you don't get £600,000 a year. With some of the key development areas are locked up with neighbourhood plans. So you can't touch that money. That's probably going to remove about a third of that. So you're actually debating about £400,000 a year. You're potentially going to create a whole new structure to decide how to spend £400,000 a year when we've already got a structure in place. That's the maths. That's the maths.
Jenny, you sit in area.
We sit in area
I can
committee
tell
four.
you categorically, Councillor Kennedy.
Area Committee 4 didn't even meet
That is not true.
this year because it was
We just
ignored.
met. We just met a week ago.
We had to
Yes.
cancel it.
Like, that's
yeah.
just not true.
Well,
Yeah, we
all got an email,
spent
so we didn't meet.
£600,000 easy. We just did that. And
Sorry,
I guess-
how much did Area Committee 6 spend this year?
well, I don't-
Nothing.
Yeah,
We didn't have anything.
But this is the point that Jim just made, which is that if we had 3 area committees for the civil, and those could be separate from the sub areas, we would be able to. And also,
have you checked that having 2 different local decision-making structures will even be lawful? Because we've already been told the Act says you should use your local decision-making structures. Very much within the Act, that would be area committees.
It is for us to determine how many area committees we have.
So we'll
Yes,
have
but-
2 sets of area committees.
No, sorry, just to be, because I'm afraid that.
Okay,
I'm just concerned,
Sorry,
having
just-
deliberate inflation in play. I've never said that this construct, the legal construct of SIL that I want us to consider further, makes the decision. The members of those committees make the decision, but you're mapping it across so that as the localities make their choices, they're informed and it's fed up. I just want to be clear, we're not conflating the recommendation.
All right.
Because of course you don't want
I don't think, I mean, it doesn't personally affect me at all because my whole ward has a neighbourhood plan. I'm more thinking about you, the city. My question is, I actually don't understand what you're proposing. I would propose to be 3 different funding pots.
No. I mean, for today's vote, what I'm proposing is we decouple the decision about how SIL is divided and we vote based on localities and we reserve the right to change the way that SIL is structured more in line with Jim's point about trying to reach an equitable city. That is the decision today. The truth is, the fact we're all tripping over this is because we don't know. The work's not been done. That's kind of my point.
work
Is that
has been done.
we're learning in the room from people like Jim, with seasoned professionals informing us of something that we clearly don't understand.
I mean, we actually discussed and decided on this at the last meeting. And so what you're doing is, revisiting a decision that the committee made previously on what area committees would do and would not do. What we're
that
doing
is
today
true,
is
that is
discussing
what we are
the other
discussing.
questions.
I think it's a valid question to discuss. However, I am going to have to start getting on with this. So let's crack open the debate proper. We need to actually answer some of these questions directly, rather than just talking about what we think might come out of this. Guy and then Lorraine.
Thank you. I sympathise greatly with Councillor Kent's point. I think I appreciate what Councillor Beach is trying to do. I'm not sure this is the best way of doing it, or the proposal we've heard today is the best way of doing it. As we've discussed in the model before, it's quite possible for two area committees to jointly make a decision to both spend their money on the same thing. And I assume that's a level of flexibility we could have. Equally, I know that I'm very steered. If a development's happened in you know, one of the other wards in my committee area, it's pretty unlikely I'm going to object to what the local councillors there want to spend it on. It strikes me as peculiar that if something happened in kind of the Cheltenham Road tip of Cotton, that Loch Lee's councillors would have a say on what that money is spent on, rather than councillors in Ashley. That strikes me as a perverse outcome. So it seems to me that what we're trying to do is to come up with build in the most flexible way. As in we're trying to, if we, formal process is what's required to deal with this, then let's maximise the flexibility in that formal process to enable SIL money to be spent alongside other budgets that have been devolved, money that can be brought in from partner organisations, money that can be brought in from WECA. But let's maximise that flexibility.
Yeah, I guess there's a
I would love to
question.
see some options from officers on that. I know that those projects have been done in the past, and I think at the end of the day, one of the advantages of the committee model is that, as you say, we will have a transport policy group that could deal with any disputes, that could make any decisions with that overarching view that we'd need. So we're quite free to leave the structures as they are, but ensuring that each one of them has the flexibility to spend the money the way that they want. And I need to come back to just because there's a slight danger here. I got the feeling, Jim, when you were talking about equity, what you were talking about, roughly speaking, was all the wards having the same. Is that right?
Yes, I was
You
talking
were just using it as an example.
And what I wanted to flag is that the way that equity has been used in previous discussions is not everyone getting the same. It's to ensure that more deprived areas get more than areas that are less deprived. There's a rebalancing effect. Now that strikes me as something that is crucial. It's something that all parties on this committee have argued for, and indeed in a subcommittee. But is still the best way of doing that, or rather is local still the best way of doing that? If it was a strategic priority for strategic SIL to rebalance, to address historic inequalities in the amount of development and the amount of work that's been done, then let's deal with it as a citywide problem, to ensure that those budgets exist from a citywide point of view to address historic inequalities between wards and between area committees. That seems to be the best way. Final thing, apologies, we covered an awful lot of ground with the debate bouncing around. I just want to come to Councillor Dollops' point about petitions. It would seem bizarre to me that an area committee would turn around to a residents group with collected petitions and say, you don't have enough, we're not going to engage with it. Again, as I said with all policy committees and regulatory committees, I think it should be at the chair's discretion as to what they do with each and every petition that comes forward. And 1,000 is a good number for a citywide committee to go, you must have a debate. It strikes me as it would be quite a good way of using the area committees to say that anyone can submit a petition. What's done with it is at the discretion of the chair. But one of the things the chair, I think, should be able to do, say if you have that petition of 300 signatures on an issue that's very pertinent to a specific locality, that area committee should be able to say, this goes for debate at that policy committee, without needing 1,000 signatures. I think that would be a great way of squaring that circle.
I really like that suggestion. Yeah, okay. I want to take us on that petition question because I feel like we're all supportive of something like that, and it's like an isolated thing that we can talk about right now. Does anyone have any objection to like just making an arbitrary decision right now about chairs being able to refer petitions to committees that they receive at the area?
For debate.
For debate, yeah.
Even if they've only got 3 signatures.
Yeah.
Well, even if they've only got 3?
It's at the discretion of the chair. If the
We determine
How special.
Yeah, we've got too much undecided stuff there. I think we can't. Do you want to comment on that, Tim?
I will.
Sorry.
I will if I can, Chair, just from a practical perspective, because if we think about the governance arrangements we put in place already, it's 1,500 signatures for petition debate, I believe.
No, it's 1,000.
It's 1,000? 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Still-
quite a lot for
Still,
area
still
committees.
at 1,000 signatures to trigger a petition debate at a policy committee. Our policy committees are there to consider key decisions and to take other items of business that would be appropriate for those committees. For there to be an escalation from an area committee of a petition that hasn't reached that threshold flies in the face of us having a threshold for that committee in the first place.
Yeah, I would say that we need to put in something about the chair's discretion to take petitions and debate petitions at area committees. And I think that's the core thing that comes out of what of this point on petitions. So I think we should just put that in and move on to other points.
So you're going to let the chair reject the public from submitting a petition?
If it's we need a threshold, but we haven't got one suggested, and I'm not really capable of suggesting just a threshold on the spot. So that's something we can't. Like, are we happy to decide that with a 200? Is that good enough?
Can I just check, have we actually even determined how a chair will be selected at an area committee?
So it's the same as
Elected by the area.
It's elected by the committee.
And it's only ever going to be an elected representative. So it's not a loaded question. Because obviously in the neighbourhood partnerships, your chair is often not an elected person.
Oh yeah, no,
That's
it will be
just
a councillor that's
right,
elected
sorry,
by
I'm
the
just,
council.
yes, okay, I'm just trying to get, because
Sorry,
this
that's
is
the
making a
current
curveball,
arrangement
I'm
and that
trying to
will
understand.
continue.
Fine, okay,
Yeah.
apologies, yeah, I just wasn't clear.
Okay, I think
There was a protocol before. So the protocol was that the neighbourhood committee within the neighbourhood partnership is elected chair amongst itself, which would be a councillor. That would be from the largest group present. That would be the standard protocol. If the largest groups were equal, it would be the largest group on the council.
Mm.
So in other words,
okay.
that was the protocol.
Yeah, I don't think we need to worry about that. There's
What
a
you do is
question
you
about petition thresholds that I don't think we're able to
Can we
make.
make a proposal, Chair?
Okay, I will make a proposal of if it gets 200. There you go, finger in the air. This is local decision making. 200 signatures, then it gets a debate in an area committee. Is that a good threshold? Who's in favour? 200. Any advance on 200? Do I see 250?
Can you try what the rules are though for council petitions at municipal council? We've got some rules around those.
3,500 is the
No, that's for a debate. We're specifically talking about.
Councillors can present a petition, a meeting of full council for 1 minute, and it doesn't matter how many signatures are on that. But that doesn't trigger it.
That doesn't trigger.
3,500 for a debate.
Right.
Right, thank you, Chair. I think we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole today.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. We're going to, because I think we haven't determined yet how we're going to, which model we're going for, if anything. Right? So we need to do that before we start looking at petitions and what it would look like. And because that would mean that in each area, whichever that might be, whether it's 50 local area committees or 1 or 10 or 9, that you have 200 people engaged.
Okay.
So you could never get a petition in ever. So let's just park that because we don't know what we're looking at. In regards to the discussion we've previously had as a group about equity and what that means, we've had that debate, and we've had that debate on the premise that you cannot not spend SIL in your designated area. So, so we had some different information today. So therefore, I think but it's important just to say that this is not something that's just come up today. That's really annoying because we have been discussing equity about the committee system. That's been something, and Nicola actually supported me last time in that debate. So that's not a new conversation, yeah? So that's something that is really important, and I don't think that we've resolved that, and whether we will in 2023. In regards to the, I'm just moving on a roll. So in regards to the proposals that we have in front of us, because it's our past 12.
Yeah.
We need to start looking at this a little bit, and I think one of the things that a sort of, in regards to 1 and 2 proposal, because I'm getting into the debate, in regards to 1 and 2, I'm not happy with, and this is genuine, we were talking about it anyway, about 1 and 2 are quite similar, but the difference between 1 and 2 is that I think in 2, sorry, I've got the wrong glasses on, which is never really helpful at all, sorry, I think 2 doesn't have Easton and Lawrence Hill together.
2
So-
has Easton and Lawrence Hill together.
Sorry, 2 does, sorry.
One doesn't.
Yeah, so glasses. So I am not, I'm not sure about to my fellow councillors. I don't live in Fieldwood and I don't live in Hartcliffe, so I don't even know the boundaries, so I'm really sorry. So I think we need to understand what each area thinks. People that councillors that are covering the evidence, I don't know. And we need to make sure whatever decision we have, Eastville and Lawrence are sort of on the same page, because I would say that Eastville and Easton bizarrely doesn't match. Do you see what I mean? And I genuinely mean that. It's not words are very different.
Yeah.
So that's the debate started. So
thanks, Lorraine.
I'm happy for 10, but we would have to make sure that 10 is reflective of what's needed. Does that make sense, everybody, please? Thank you.
Yeah, no, it does. Let's crack into, maybe let's start answering these questions properly. And I will, I'll just say, based on all of the information, an indication, we're not going to necessarily commit to this right away. Who supports option 1 as it stands of the maps?
Sorry, what's option 1?
Sorry. Of the three proposals for the area committee boundaries.
Why wouldn't you ask if people
Let's-
want to keep the 6 or change to one of the other options first?
Well, that's one of the options.
That's one
Just
of the
keep
options.
6.
Yeah, so surely that's the first discussion. Do you want to keep as is or do you want to change?
All right.
Because option 1 and 2 are
Who
very similar.
supports? Okay. Who supports option 3 over
Which is the
options
current
1 or 2?
boundaries, yeah?
The current boundaries. I'm just. This isn't for a finish.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
Because you've had a lot of things to say.
I apologise.
Who supports keeping the boundaries as they are? Right.
I
That's
have to in the short term. I have no choice.
that's
In
1.5.
the medium term.
All right. So, of the options 1 and 2, then, who prefers option 1?
Yeah.
Use the 10.
Which is the 10.
Oh, sorry. I was voting for the 9.
Okay. And who supports option 2?
Sorry, and this is 9 committees.
That would be 9 committees, yeah. Hang on. Oh, and who's abstaining? 1.
I don't know.
Switching bit.
Okay, but this is just an indication anyway. That's not. I'm not. He's not voting, is what I was actually saying. Not abstaining. It's not a formal vote. So you're not voting.
But I'm not going to vote.
Yeah, you're not going to vote. All right. So we're edging towards 9 committees.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'm not so sure that the objection, or the key part of the decision for members is between having 9 committees or 10 committees. It's around what is in each of the committees that's the challenge. Now, every time this has come up, the challenging areas that you raise, certainly with me most often, and in the public forum as well, is Eastern and Lawrence Hill should not be split out. I don't know you feel that way, I know Waldfront feels that way, I know other councils feel that way. There may be other areas of concern around the city, but there are specific wards. What I was going to suggest was, given that we have public engagement events yet to happen, is that we identify in reasonably short order any area, any wards with which there are specific concerns, and we simply push it to those engagement events. But it's still
We need to make a decision about what boundaries we're going to use today. That is the decision we need to make. Like, now, if people have strong... So, Nicola's got a strong feeling that the way we allocate SIL ought to be just decoupled from everything else. And she's argued that on an equitability ground. We've had like an hour's discussion of that, nearly. I think, yeah, the general feeling is that the second option is probably the best out of the three available to us. And then there's a separate issue on, are we going to try and decouple that SIL decision from those other area committee decisions. So I would think we should put Nicola's question to the vote now, and then we'll be able to make every other decision.
Can I clarify what the vote is?
I'm just taking
okay,
it.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Can I just say, I feel we've gone round a huge discussion, and I'm not sure any of us are any clearer, apart from Nicola, who seems very clear, but I'm not sure whether we're actually clear on all the issues. And I just want to raise one. If we are homing in on options 1 or 2, now at the moment, my ward is part of the extremely peculiar shaped area 1 that stretches the length of the north side of the city and a little bit even on the south side. Now, in terms of equity, at the moment, that includes a whole range of wards. What we're going to do with this option is split out the more deprived wards and put them in with 2 more deprived wards to produce a new area 1 that basically gets no SIL from 1 year to the next, and then create an area 2 which is all the lowest level of deprivation in the city. Now, that's great. That means we'll have more money within our ward because we're not having to allocate it and share it. But that doesn't seem to be the spirit of what we're trying to do either. And I have a feeling we are rushing, we're almost rushing into this without thinking of all the consequences and the issues. And I feel extremely uncomfortable. Maybe I shouldn't have set the tangent going with the petition bit, but if we just randomly choose a number without actually knowing what size the area committees are, and it being something proportionate to the areas we're dealing with, and then we come in and approve some proposals that actually totally alter the demographics of the groups that make it up. My leafy suburb area is going to have its own challenges and frustrations, but nothing like Area 1, which will be meeting 4 times a year to discuss how it's not going to spend anything because it hasn't got anything.
That's not true though, because it's got the arena, and the arena will provide SIL.
As well.
And I also really think...
So in which case, my challenge would be that my area is going to suffer from the transport going to the arena as well, but we won't get any benefit from that.
You're just trying to nick their SIL, aren't you, Jeff?
All right. Guys.
I'm only saying there are so many issues here. We are rushing into trying to fix it, and Tom's made a valid point. And there are so many issues here. But if we are making decisions without being aware of all those valid points, I think we are in danger of making something that is less likely to succeed. And I therefore think we should be looking at a few decisions of principle. And I know this is going to make Tim's challenge bigger, but if we have to make some decisions of principle and decide on further work that needs to be done to refine the absolute detail, then we should do so rather than rushing into it and producing something that may not achieve what we want it to.
So I think that there's a massive point that people are missing here, which is that whoever is in charge next year could decide for some reason to spend all their money in your ward. That's what the council could decide to do. We don't have control over that. The point we're making...
I can be pretty sure they won't.
They've got
to get budget through there.
Yes.
It's never happened yet.
My point is one of principle, Jeff, isn't it? So, my point is one of principle, which is that we are trying to design a way to force allows councillors to make particular decisions. Oh, you're going to be equitable, we'll give you the opportunity to be equitable, and either they will or they won't. And it's Mark's point from earlier that if we take into account what the integrity of the councillors, the integrity of the council as a whole, either people are going to vote to do things that help areas that are deprived at a strategic level, whether they take advantage of SIL, whether they give away their SIL, they'll be able to do that. And that is a decision for whoever is in charge next year. The point is that we're trying to set up a structure that works for local people making local decisions and that enables councillors to make those decisions well. Either that's going to happen now, today, when we go through these questions, which we probably don't have time to do, so I might say that we'll have to take a short break and extend the meeting, but because this needs to be decided today. This is a final meeting. We need to get the constitution through council in January. That needs to happen, and unless we have a rush meeting at some point in December, this is not going to go anywhere, right? So, and I would also like to point out that you've had these papers for weeks. You could have been talking to every single one of your partners, every single person in your parties. I spoke to everyone in my party, and I got a phone call from Tony. I got Barry to submit a statement because he wanted a certain thing, and I think we do have a lot of information. The only information that we perhaps didn't have is about whether this deprivation is a good model for SIL usage. But fundamentally, if we want to address deprivation, we should be talking to the Department of Levelling Up, not, oh, well, we've got 20 pence off building a house. We fundamentally need to separate these things. So I've got tons of hands because I've done a hand, sorry. What I'm going to do is I'll do a 5-minute break, and I'm going to say that this is going to go on for longer than 1 o'clock. So
I'm afraid I can't.
I'm really,
No,
yeah,
I just
yeah.
Can I have to go as well?
Yeah.
Can I make a process suggestion?
Yeah, process suggestions.
So we need to come on to this decoupling or not. I think the group, there was a vote, the group's indicated option 2 and 9 area committees.
Yeah.
There was a majority for in the room.
Okay.
So, but I think what we need to decide is whether the SIL bit of that is going to be dealt with in 9 area committees or not. I think that's the thing we still need to deal with. I would suggest that we take B, D, C, D and E now, because I don't think there's any probably difference of views. I think we probably all agree that we support public meetings, that we support the principal area committee should meet in person twice a year, we support remote meetings, and that there should be a protocol for engagement. And I think we should put those to the room now and just do yes or no votes with my suggestion, so we can bottom out this major issue.
Good idea.
I'm going to do that, Lorraine.
Well, do you know what? I'm sitting here listening and I'm getting overwhelmed by certain people who are just coming in and seem to be making decisions, right? We are not here to dictate what our communities might think, and we haven't had the opportunity to do that. At the start, when I started my looking at this just now, one of the things I said was, I don't know these areas well enough to be able to say, oh yeah, absolutely, you know, option 1.4 is perfect, because I don't, that's not the area that I know particularly well. So I do think it's important that we have an understanding of the needs of area. And Jeff's points around this would affect me, you know, is area in this way, or it might, you know, negatively impact on this particular thing. That's important, and that is part of the debate, because we're talking about communities. And I do think that our communities need to have the opportunities to have a say. And if we have to reconvene an emergency meeting, then we can do so just specifically on this. It is not about just driving through other agendas. I'm not happy with that. That's not the way that we should be doing politics, and that's not the way we should be making decisions in this room.
No, we
That
do
would
need
really
to make
annoy
a
me.
decision at some point. Though,
Yes,
don't
of course
we?
we
Can't
do,
keep kicking the
yes.
can down the road, can we?
But we need to make decisions that's not based on the current model of how decisions are made within the council at the moment.
Yeah, that's
we're
why
looking
it's
at being equitable, we're looking at inclusivity.
All right, okay. Lorraine's point about talking to communities is probably something that I would have said that the councillors should have been doing, and I guess what I'm going to have to do is bemoan the fact that councillors haven't prepared for this meeting sufficiently.
I think I have.
I'm sorry, Jenny. I really don't think that's an appropriate comment. I don't think it helps the situation. I really don't. I think for many of us to consult our residents on something when they get very little out of what is there already actually makes us look stupid.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, that we do not engage with large parts of the city through this process because there is no financial benefit for doing so. If you only get a spend in a ward once every 3 or 4 years as a result of monies in an area committee, community groups don't engage. So I think to blame us for not consulting with people about something that they don't have any reason to engage with is not helpful.
All right, I'm going to take the suggestion that we're going to have to adjourn this meeting. Tim?
Chair, just before you do that, I just want to remind the committee of the timeline that we're on for the council's constitution, which we're due to take to January full council. But we've also got a special meeting of the audit committee on Monday the 18th of December, where they will have the opportunity to review all the new elements of the council's constitution. So we will publish papers for that the Friday of the week before, which would be the 8th of December, I believe. So we've got we've got 2 weeks from today, really, before we do that. So that's the time frame within which we would need an indicative position from the committee.
So could I make a proposal that we try and look at answering as many of the questions that are here that could give an indication on areas that may make it possible for at least the constitution to be drafted and identify which areas we need more time on. Because the last thing we'll do is make what's already a challenge a bigger challenge, but there is no benefit to us in drafting something that is being forced by a time limit that won't actually solve all the issues. So if we can give some clarity on some of these points and be clear on what bits we have to discuss and then adjourn the meeting, that would be helpful.
I support that.
Okay, who supports that?
I think a small word change would resolve some of this. To the item A. If you change area committee to neighbourhood.
I'm not going to take things from the floor. I think the point is that so Lorraine says that she doesn't want to make decisions on B, C, D, E, F without making the decision on A. Was that your point? But I think we can probably look at questions B through E.
But we decided that we already had a vote. We actually had a vote.
We've had a vote on A.
The only vote we've had.
That wasn't what you said. No, I said that was an indicative vote.
But it should be recorded in the minutes as it was an indicative vote.
It was an indicative vote.
But I'm just in the minutes and edited.
Because there is a serious question that underpins.
I tell you what, Chair, is it possible that during meetings I'd like to speak with the Labour councillors, myself in private, for 5 minutes, and that might mean we can move on, because I want to understand precisely what's being put, and maybe I can be persuaded, and then maybe we can actually just get on and make some decisions.
I'm not happy.
Well, I want a 5 minute break.
I've
told you the purpose of my 5 minute break.
I'm not happy with the meeting that I've chaired. I feel like I've identified, things haven't gone in a timely way that we can all feel like we've had a say, we've had a debate. There's been one debate, right, and it's not resolved any of our questions. Yes.
Chair, I think the other thing that the committee needs to recognise, given the very tight time frame that we have for a decision by full council, is that the default position at the moment is that we would have 6 area committees, And if a firm recommendation cannot come from the working group and get endorsed by full council against that time frame, then it would seem to me that the only realistic option is to it would be something for the future administration, a task and finish exercise through the relevant policy committee in due course.
But
just say that.
There wasn't support for that option.
No.
There was 1.5 people that voted for that option.
All right.
So I think there was a vote. We had a vote.
All
Right.
Okay.
Option 2 had the most preference. We sent it towards it on that basis to deal with.
But
I second that.
he's saying that's the default position. All right.
It doesn't sound like we're getting to a
we're not
decision
getting
this
to a
morning, this
decision.
afternoon.
Yeah, and I also think, Chair, so all respect, they never ever butt in like this. I feel like we're being railroaded in this meeting, and I am saying that out loud. I think there's something going on in this room, and pushing. That's not how I do business. I'm going to excuse myself from this meeting, so whatever happened will be without my consent because it's outrageous. I'm not going to be channeled down the road when there's lots of unanswered questions here. This is not good politics. I'm sorry.
Chair, can I just remind the meeting that we had an informal meeting and we actually said that we would draw up the final paper. We took on board comments. We asked for further comments. When we came to that meeting, we actually received no further comments. So that was the paper we drew up. And so we tried to bring a paper here for today. To be fair to Councillor Beach, she did raise some of these issues before. That's why I've asked for a 5-minute adjournment, so I can perhaps try to understand the point she's making, because I can't understand within this meeting.
Yeah, I need us to adjourn this meeting and
I'm going to default. I'm going to agree with Tim.
I'm going to. We're not making the decisions today. That's what's happened. Because we've run out of time for this debate. I'm very sorry about that.
So are you
provisionally, I'm going
to
to end the meeting, and we're going to have to reschedule it. I'm just going to end the meeting. I'm really sorry, but there's not been a full debate.
So a motion was moved to bring a series of votes. I'm happy to second that motion. Councillor has moved a motion to move to the vote on certain questions.
I just feel that seems to be quite straightforward to deal with. Is there anyone who disagrees with the questions?
Literally just hold a simple vote on each of those questions.
And can I remind you with respect, Chairman, when a motion's been validly proposed and seconded, it needs to be put to the vote.
All right. Okay, so from a process point of view, because I don't know how to chair, I would need a seconder to adjourn.
We're not going to deal with
No, we've got the vote.
But we've got a
we have a motion on we have a motion on the table.
All right. So are we going? Okay. So does so the room wants to. Yeah, we're still poor. I'm sorry. We are still poor. Right. I'm not comfortable with this, but okay. Can you just stop? Right. A motion has come forward that we move to a vote
on B to E.
On B to E.
Yeah.
Well, we have a seconder. Do people want to do that?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Can I just have one thing? On B, the debate before was that they were meeting 4 times a year. The question is 2.
That's
public.
Public.
Oh, understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies. Carry on.
Right, so B. Does the working group support the proposal that area committees should hold public meetings in local areas of the city?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Does the working group support the principle that area committees should meet in person 2 times per year, where the paper refers to another 2 times online?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's not unanimous. D. Does the working group support the principle that area committees should have the ability to hold remote meetings, provided that no decisions are being taken in those remote meetings?
Yes.
Yes. E. Does the working group agree that a protocol for engagement and constitution with area committees should be developed? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm not very comfortable with asking A again, but I am going to ask it because that's probably what the meeting wants. Who supports option 1 out of the 3 maps?
Just how many wards would you just say?
We're just going to do a straight vote between the 3. This is a formal vote.
I know.
So, sorry, just, we did spend an hour talking about my proposal. Is this agnostic of the debate around
This is
future
agnostic
work
of
needed
that.
for SIL?
So I've got a
Name
plan.
of committees,
I've got a plan to move this on, right? So the point is that there is, as identified, a second question, and I think that this is the point on which we need to adjourn and re-meet, which is SIL specifically. So there is a SIL specific debate that we need to go and have at another meeting.
Perfect.
Whereas this is, we're just going to talk about, maybe it will include SIL, but maybe it won't. All of the other responsibilities that we did agree at the last meeting would go to the area committees as a block. So we're going to look at option, the 3 options, and I'm going to do a vote on each of them because they're each in the paper. So who would support option 1?
10 wards.
10. I need your hand or not my hand?
Yeah, I support that.
1. Option 2.
I also support that.
Okay.
You get one vote, guy.
Do you?
Okay.
That's across the post.
I'm happy to support either of them.
Okay. Okay. Option 3. No. Okay. Right.
We can make a decision.
Well, we can make a decision, but there's a second debate, and it does have a financial contingent of it. And there's also question E, does the working group have any recommendations in respect of the budget financial assumptions? I think that's more of a comments thing, so if you have comments, then we might just need to feed those in.
It's coupled with the option we've just voted for.
Yes. Yeah. Right, so, oh, sorry, okay, I'm going to actually motion that we do vote on F as well.
Yes, is the answer.
Do we want to recommend what is in the paper?
It's a total cost of £225,000 for the 9 area committee.
No, have that. That's 4 public meetings a year.
That's 4.
Oh, right,
It's
sorry.
about
120, 110 to 125.
I don't think there's anything. What exactly do you need from that one, Tim? Because it's phrased in such a way that it's like it's not an aye or nay.
So the report identifies that any additional budget or financial implications arising from any decisions from the working group should be passed through to the budget process. So I would recommend that any decision that you want to recommend from here goes to the finance task group. Councillor Gold, do you think that will be appropriate as the chair of resources scrutiny? Is that the right place to?
It could, but it probably ought to go to the deputy mayor responsible for
Mayor
finance as well, because he's the one who actually makes the decision.
Okay, so we'll do both.
Okay. I think you're just going to do that based on the decisions we've made.
It sounds like it, but I don't think we've had the vote yet.
Well,
I think we've had enough debate.
I think we've had enough debate.
So not enough votes there to authorise it.
Guy, what was your point?
I wanted to raise a query just in respect to the scope of F. One of the reasons that I didn't vote against the prohibition on committees meeting more than twice a year in person and the decision not to let them meet remotely, so to only let them meet remotely if they're making no decisions, is what happens if an opportunity arises between meetings and you need a formal decision to spend money. I know that a huge number of things like national lottery grants in effect are ruled out now. It's something we can bid for. Right, so what I was hoping to suggest was to create a recommendation that area committees be able to meet a 3rd time, 4th time in some aspect in order to make those decisions.
There's not a firm limit there. It's not like a legal limit. But an emergency meeting was needed, I'm sure. You know, it's a good reason for it to happen. It might have to happen in this building to keep costs down, but
In which case, yeah, then I'd like to include that.
it just says should be, not
F.
Right. To audit to consider as part of the pack. So.
Right. Right, those recommendations are clear, I think. And with that, I'm not going to take a final item because it is more appropriate for that to come to the next meeting, which we will be having, but yeah.
Can I ask you a question on whether you are adjourning this meeting to reconvene, in which case it could happen tomorrow? Or are you closing it? Well, it could happen tomorrow, or are you closing this meeting, in which case we have to give 5 days notice of convening?
I think we're adjourning. Do I have a seconder to adjourn that? Okay.
Any speakers going to be allowed?
So?
Any speakers going to be allowed on there?
No, because we have a public forum for this meeting.
Yeah. We're adjourning to come back and finish the agenda, aren't we? And bottom out the question of the...
Yeah.
So then, with a vested interest, because if I may not be able to attend, would that mean that I could not send a substitute?
Oh, that's a good question.
Certainly on resources, when we do that, we have chosen to waive that position.
I think we will waive that position. Yeah.
So what I was then going to suggest is how, I don't know, Tim, how possible it would be for you to prepare a brief note on what Nicola is suggesting and the implications of it, because I think that would help whoever is attending. It may even be that actually there would be a logical agreement, which we'd still need to have a meeting to formally endorse. But I think that would be really helpful, because what we don't want is another 2 hours of semi-enlightened discussion. Whereas if we can have a bit of information and background. All right, I overstated it, Richard. But if we can have that bit of background.
So, Chair, I'll undertake to meet with Councillor Beach and any other officers, Jim perhaps, who wants to be involved, so that we can ensure that there's an appropriate paper prepared for the reconvene meeting. But what would also be really helpful, if there's any further points of clarification that any member of the committee wants us to give a view on, for those to be provided directly to me, and I'll make sure that they're reflected on and incorporated into the paper.
So I think the level of anticipated SIL by ward, and some of your thoughts, Jim, that you were sharing around kind of just what an equity model could look like, we can differentiate equity over time. I think that'd be one thing. I think we kind of bottomed out the level of expected development as well. I'm obviously conscious not all development contributes SIL, but it should be useful to really understand that evidence. I've had some information this week, but I'm conscious other committee members won't have seen it.
Yeah, I mean, what you've had, Councillor, are you happy for that to be forwarded to? Because realistically, the timescales we've got, there's not going to be much in addition to that.
Yeah, there was some duplication in the figures, wasn't there, around areas of growth and regeneration.
Just to clarify my discomfort, I suppose, an idea has been raised for the first time in a public meeting. No details of the proposal have been published, and now adjourned meetings with no details of that proposal will be published before the committee votes on it. I was going to clarify that's what's happening.
No, you're going to be sent further information so we can...
We'll get further information.
Yeah. We will make sure it is published, but it doesn't, we don't need to necessarily do the 5 days, and we won't get public statements on it. But it will be publicised. Because the fact is, otherwise we were going to just describe it here and then vote on it, right? Because we did come up with the proposal today, as it were. All right. Yes. Can we reconvene next Friday, is the question. Yes? No? No? No one is paying attention to me. Right, thanks everyone. I guess that's what we're doing. And if you... Okay, great. Thanks
Chair.
Yeah, no noises concerned.
Yes. Point, because I may not be at this next meeting, because obviously I'm in the work that's going to be done on equity in SIL will that look at lawful mechanisms? Because I understand, for example, in the business rate system, there is a redistribution arrangement, there's a mechanism. I think the committee could benefit from understanding what those mechanisms might look like in a local context. So I may not be here for the next meeting, so I wanted to get that point in.
All right. Okay, so next Friday we're meeting again.
Right. My apologies for that. Can I just ask, in the circumstances, at your discretion, could any public statements be taken on whatever paper is circulated?
At my discretion, yes.
It just seems that to have a situation where we're talking about public engagement and we have no chance for people to contribute on what is, as Guy said, wasn't on the agenda, so therefore people weren't aware of. So if we give that opportunity, there's the potential for them to put in an opinion.
Yeah, I think we'll allow it, but we won't. We won't commit to taking it, but I may use my discretion.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I'm quite
What you wanted to say to us in 5 minutes chat, I was like... What have you unleashed? I think it's still acceptable time stuff.
Probably didn't put you on.
At least we gave you excitement. If you can explain to us what the hell happened, that would be great.